समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है, अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
News has broken out, or headlines have broken out of Dhaka after quite some time. And you know what? These are on predictable lines. So, International Crimes Tribunal, which Sheikh Hasina had set up in 2010, almost exclusively to specially try, this was a special court to try those guilty of or allegedly guilty of human rights violations or working with the Pakistanis during the freedom struggle of Bangladesh, leading to the creation of Bangladesh in 1970. But mostly these were people from Jamaat or Razakars who were collaborators of the Pakistani army, etc. This court was set up in 2010. The Yunus administration has used the same court. The same court system after some amendments that they carried out, because initially the court was set up only to try those blamed for human rights excesses, abuses, and also for collaborating with the Pakistanis, especially Pakistani army in 1971. The terms of reference of the ICT were amended by the Yunus administration. Yunus is still chief advisor, and thereby charges were filed against Sheikh Hasina and some of her key advisors and key aides. Now, this court has delivered its verdict. The verdict is death sentence for former Prime Minister several times, Sheikh Hasina Wazir, her Home Minister Asaduzzaman Khan, against both of them for crimes against humanity and for ordering firing on protesters and for the killing of a bunch of students, two groups of students, 6 in one place, 6 in another. I will give you details as we go along. Those are the specific charges. Then along with them convicted former IGP, Inspector General of Police, Chaudhry Abdullah Al Mamun. He's been convicted but given only 5 years. It's a life sentence. So because he became royal witness or state witness or Sarkari Gawah, he's been pardoned, but he's been given a 5-year sentence. That's like a rap on the knuckles compared to a death sentence he would have got otherwise. So he has spoken out. He has given evidence against Sheikh Hasina Wazir and also his Home Minister Asaduzzaman Khan. Both of them have been given a death sentence under one charge, and under other charges life sentence also until death. Now, how exactly has this proceeded? This court, obviously Sheikh Hasina or any of the others were not present in court to defend themselves. They were not there. They also did not accept the court proceedings. Everybody is in exile except obviously this Inspector General of Police. He was caught there, so he made all these compromises and deals. Those who were not present, they were defended in absentia by a government-appointed council. This was a large charge sheet. In the subcontinent, these documents tend to be very thick. This was an 8,747-page charge sheet. The order itself from the court is 453 pages. The charge sheet had a 2,724-page list. The charges are that 1,400 people were killed in these police firings, and also in attacks by Awami League supporters, mainly Chhatra League, who were loyalists of Sheikh Hasina Wazir. 1,400 killed, 15,000 injured. So 2,724 pages just have details of these. 454 witnesses were examined. The examination of witnesses, etc., was 28 days. Prosecution was carried out by two very senior government lawyers, Chief Prosecutor Muhammad Tajul Islam and Attorney General of Bangladesh, Muhammad Asaduzzaman. The government appointed a defense counsel, Muhammad Amir Hussain, who obviously claimed that his clients were innocent, etc. That was tossed aside. It was a very quick verdict. It was a bit like a military court, as quick as that. And this death sentence was handed out. There's a little nuance there. When Sheikh Hasina had first set up the ICT, there was no provision of appeal for anybody sentenced in the ICT. However, after she set up the ICT in 2010, protests started that this was too one-sided and too unfair. By 2013, when the ICT was handing out the first orders, these protests had built up, and thereby a right to appeal was added. In fact, one of those convicted and given a death sentence by the ICT later got acquitted in appeal, but remember that happened in 2025. That is under a different dispensation, under the Yunus dispensation. That background we need to know. Now, while all this is happening, the three judges on this tribunal are Justice Ghulam Murtaza Majumdar, Justice Muhammad Shafiullah Alam Mahmood, and Judge Muhammad Mohitul Haq Inam Chaudhry. Three judges have given this verdict. Sheikh Hasina has said this is a rigged tribunal and the order is by an unelected government which has no democratic mandate. And then she goes on to say, in their distasteful call for the death penalty, they reveal a brazen and a murderous intent of extremist figures within the interim government to remove Bangladesh's last elected prime minister and to nullify Awami League as a political force. Is that the statement she's issued from exile? Now, this has caused a little bit of a commotion, although this was expected. This was expected because until this happened, until Yunus had secured the conviction of Sheikh Hasina and her people, he wasn't going to announce the dates for elections, etc. Because he's committed to holding elections in Bangladesh by February 26. That is just over 3 months away. He also wants to bar Awami League from contesting elections. That is very much the model that we just saw play out in Pakistan, when Pakistan held its last election in 2024 with the army interceding and making sure that Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, the party of the most popular leader in Pakistan, Imran Khan, that was barred from contesting. So this is very much a leaf that Yunus has pulled out of Pakistan's book. However, it is true that Awami League did become very unpopular. That's how this street uprising took place. Once again, the idea, nobody is even thinking of an idea that Sheikh Hasina will go back now and campaign, even if the Awami League was allowed to contest. However, holding one more election in a big democracy with a lot of voters, while barring the latest incumbent and the longest ruling party, or the party with the longest stint over various terms, with the longest stint in power, the longest elected stint in power, by barring them, you put a question mark on the legitimacy of the election. Now, India is obviously treading very carefully because Bangladesh is a very important neighbor. India has very important agreements with Bangladesh. It was under Sheikh Hasina that India and Bangladesh settled their borders. So Bangladesh has become one major neighbor of India's with land borders, with borders fully settled. And with Bangladesh, India settled not just its land borders, but also its maritime borders. That's very important. It's a very important relationship. Also Sheikh Hasina, while she was exiled from Bangladesh, or she sought exile, she came to India. India is not about to hand her back to Bangladesh, although Bangladesh Foreign Office has now made a demand that India hand her back over to Bangladesh along with her Home Minister. Both of them had left Bangladesh and come to India. Now, this is coming at a time when Bangladesh's National Security Advisor Khalilur Rahman is on his way to India. So November 19, he'll be in India and he'll be attending the Colombo Security Conclave. Now, what is Colombo Security Conclave? It started as a trilateral in 2011 at Sri Lanka's initiative between Sri Lanka, India and Maldives. In 2020, this was rebranded as Colombo Security Conclave. And then in subsequent years, others joined in 2022, Mauritius joined in 2024, July, Bangladesh joined in. July, I am particularly emphasizing because July is a very important month. That is the last month in which Sheikh Hasina was still effectively Prime Minister of Bangladesh in 2024. He'll be in India on the 19th at the invitation of Ajit Doval, our National Security Advisor. To that, I can also ascribe this very cautious Indian reaction. India says India has noted the verdict announced by the International Crimes Tribunal of Bangladesh concerning former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. As a close neighbor, India remains committed to the best interests of the people of Bangladesh, including in peace, democracy, inclusion, and stability in that country. We will always engage constructively with all stakeholders to that end. You read this statement and then you know why somebody invented the art and craft of diplomacy. This is saying something without committing to anything and also without offending anything. This is all motherhood and apple pie stuff. Now, how has the prosecution made out this? The tribunal verdict says that July 24, 2024, Sheikh Hasina held a press conference where she made a statement that was provocative. She said, who will get reservation? Remember, the spark for this revolution on the streets was the idea that some government jobs, some reservations, like reservation for caste, for example, in our country, caste, scheduled tribes, some reservations could be made, some positions could be reserved for the descendants of freedom fighters of 1971. Now that became the spark for protests in a country which had joblessness. Why joblessness? This is the subcontinent. It's always a problem. And these are young populations. She responded to that angrily by saying, oh, who will I give these jobs to? Who will we give these jobs to if not to the children of martyrs and freedom fighters? Will we give them to the children of Razakars? Razakars were people who collaborated with the Pakistanis. That's a big insult in Bangladesh. After that, protests started, students came out and they were all mocking Sheikh Hasina by saying, who's Razakar? I am Razakar. Saying that if I am asking for my rights, you must call me Razakar. And that led to this spiral which resulted in her flight on August 5. In the same statement, same press conference, the prosecution case says that she said that this protest will be put down and if needed by Chhatra League. That's a student wing of her own party. They were enough to control them. These were seen as provocative. The prosecution ended its argument on October 16, defense by October 22. Very briefly, what were the 5 counts on which this trial took place, or 5 charges against Sheikh Hasina and her people? Charge number 1 was murder, attempt to murder, torture, abetting, inciting, facilitating, being complicit in, and failing to prevent crimes against civilians by law enforcement and Awami League cadres. That is charge 1. Charge 2, under which Sheikh Hasina has been convicted. Charge 2, use of lethal weapons, helicopters, drones to subdue students, and the responsibility for giving command to the forces to do this, and also for complicity, facilitation, and conspiracy in carrying out these massacres. Number 3 was the murder of a student. This is student Abu Syed at Begum Ruqayya University on July 16. That's a specific case. Number 4, orchestrating the killing of 6 protesters in a Dhaka neighborhood of Chankharpul. That is the specific case on which these convictions have taken place. Number 5, the killing of 5 protesters and injury to 6th. Later, according to the charges, 3 of the 5 killed was burned, probably to hide evidence, and 1 injured, the 6th that was injured, was burned to death. Now, this tribunal has had many sittings, particularly between 2013 and 15, and that's when they were picking up. Many of these were available of the people who they were charging, but many were not in the country. So this tribunal itself, while it set up the precedent of handing out quick trials and quick death sentences, initially it started with a no appeal system. Later the appeal system came, but also the ICT set up by Sheikh Hasina mostly tried people in absentia, as she's been tried now. So you know what happens? You should be careful doing anything really drastic because any precedent can come back and bite you. You will see on your screens the names of key people convicted. This ICT under Sheikh Hasina in 15 years until 2024 had given 57 verdicts, which resulted in 6 executions. One of these cases where a person was given a death sentence had already escaped to UK and has been living there as a British citizen. Some others are living in Canada, one odd in Pakistan, so they couldn't be tried or they were tried in absentia. Only one, convicted on 30 December 2014, he was acquitted, but as I told you earlier, acquitted now in 2025 under the new dispensation. So this ICT is a tough place to be in. It was not set up particularly to acquit people. It was set up to convict people and to bring them to quick justice, military style. Now this is one part of the picture. And as I read this probably means that now with this done, Yunus will finally talk about dates of the elections, because he may be getting used to power, because the way he's going around the world, it doesn't seem to me, from his body language, from his style, from the policy decisions he's taking, from the strategic decisions he's taking, from how he's shifting Bangladesh strategically, very deeply and strategically, it doesn't give any indication that he thinks he's going to give up power in the next 3 months or 3.5 months or 4 months. Nevertheless, not to prejudge anything, now I don't think he is left with any excuse but to announce the date of elections, and then he has to make that big call. Does he allow Awami League to contest in the elections or not? And if he says Awami League will not contest, what kind of credibility will these elections have? This has already begun to cause a little bit of anxiety even among his supporters. Among his strongest supporters internationally, particularly in the US, he has wide support in the US, particularly the American liberal left circles, Clinton Foundation, people around Obama. Among them, he's got a lot of sympathy and a lot of adulation, and many of those forces were quite happy to see the departure of Sheikh Hasina and the rise of Muhammad Yunus, somebody who they had lionized all this while, and whose model of governance through a large NGO, which was as big as a government or as powerful as a government, is something in which many of these liberal forces found a degree of romance in a poor country. Now, one of his supporters there is John Danilovitz. John Danilovitz is a former American diplomat in Bangladesh. Ever since the revolution, ever since the shift, in fact, even before that, on social media elsewhere, he's been campaigning for a change in Bangladesh. He's been praising Yunus administration. He's been taking on Indian critics of Yunus administration. Very, very no holds barred, very bindas on Twitter. You can check him out, see his Twitter handle. He subsequently also set up an NGO or a foundation called Right to Freedom, which is Right to Freedom based in Washington, D.C., which calls itself a human rights organization, international human rights organization. He has written an article in the Daily Star, which is Bangladesh's preeminent English newspaper, where he has expressed his concern that this delay and this poor communication from Bangladesh government, from Yunus administration, is damaging the credibility of the democratic process in Bangladesh. Of course, he blames it on social media propaganda by the Awami League. What is the Awami League doing? They are running a campaign on social media. Now, one thing about social media is you don't have to be in a country to run your campaign. It's like Imran Khan's people keep running their campaign from wherever they are. Sheikh Hasina's people are running a very potent social media campaign that's basically defined by a slogan, no boat, no vote. What does it mean? I also checked. The boat is the symbol of the Awami League, which means if there is no Awami League in the election, then no vote. Then what value does the election have? That's what John Danilovitz is worried about. But he's not saying you bring Sheikh Hasina in or Awami League in. He's just saying you counter this propaganda with your own propaganda so that your process of elections or democratization does not lose credibility. So he starts out his column by quoting from Muhammad Yunus, and I quote, "I have made a solemn commitment to deliver an election that would stand out in terms of voter turnout, participation of new, young and women voters, global confidence in safety and security, and its festive atmosphere as a celebration of democracy and the rule of law." What is it that Danilovitz is worried about then? He sort of curiously adds a quote also from the famous German military scholar Karl von Clausewitz, which says in war, result can never be final. I don't know what he means by quoting this here. But then he says, Danilovich then says that this election should not just be a transfer of power, but this should demonstrate whether Bangladesh has recovered its democratic spirit after years of turbulence and deficit. And then he says actual and perceived quantity and quality of public participation is very important because this will determine the legitimacy of the next government. Then he accuses Sheikh Hasina and her party of launching a ferocious campaign against Yunus, etc. And then he says that if this electoral process fails to pass the test of credibility, this will not be seen as a renewal of democracy, but confirm the impression that Bangladesh is trapped in mobocracy, societal disorder, extortion. And that's the reason he says you have to now move to make it safe, meaningful, celebratory. Otherwise, you will fall prey to the propaganda of the spoilers, which is mainly Awami League and its international supporters. And then he says that a lot of people want to vote, but 50% are still undecided. And this social media campaign will be affecting them. So it's important for you to protect the credibility of the electoral process. The reason I'm quoting all this is to tell you that Muhammad Yunus now is in an interesting place. See, Munir to your west, Yunus to your east. Each one has got power unelected. Now, once you get power, a friend of mine in Pakistan once said, I can't mention the name right now, who said it's so tough to be in politics, so much running around, so much hard work, sweat, people shove and push, horrible. I said, but why do you do politics? And he said, because this chair, this has current. This has some current, so once you have it, you don't want to leave it, right? That is the current and the chair that Yunus has to deal with now. Now that he's enjoyed so much global adulation, he's been to the UN, he's meeting people, he's shifting Bangladesh's strategic policy almost fully, going back to Pakistan, turning the clock back on 1971, having done such major things in just about 18 months. Does he want to give up power in 3 months? Does he have a retirement plan? To which my counter question would be, or maybe my counterpoint to you would be, does Munir have a retirement plan? Once you get this chair, any which way you get it, a chair with political power in a sovereign country has its own current. It takes a lot of doing to give it up. We will be watching Professor Muhammad Yunus. Many people respect him. I've also known him in the past. He's featured on Walk the Talk in the past. And I've seen him as somebody who's done a lot for the poor. So he will now be tested early next year on whether he's willing to give up this power and go away after giving his country a fair election, because that will be his opportunity. That will not just be a retirement plan. That will be his opportunity also to find some global statesmanship. Until now, it looks like he's somebody who's acting out of incredible vengeance, not just against Sheikh Hasina, that I can also understand because she wasn't kind to him, but also in terms of his country's relationship with India, for example.